So this is the Luna backpack, and this is what we're going to be making today. It's got a zipper pocket in the front, and it's got choices of where you're going to use your leatherette or your vinyl. I've used my leatherette on the bottom, and then there's a panel at the top of the back as well. We've got some rivets in there. You don't have to use the rivets. And then we've got a little handle at the top of the bag, and then inside we've got some more pockets. So inside we've got a lovely roomy cup holder there, and then we've got a slip pocket as well, so we can put a phone or a notebook in there. We've got another zip pocket, and then we've got 4 pen pockets as well. This is not a bound bag, this is a birthed bag, so you're not going to have any of those issues if you don't like binding. So we're going to go through it step by step. So today we're going to be making the monster version of the bag. So the pattern comes with the main pattern, and then you can have the option of the add-on monster as well, which is what I'm going to show you today. The add-on monster just changes the front panel. It drops the zipper pocket down to make it into a really cute monster face, and we're going to have the zipper pocket at the bottom. So it's just a smaller zipper pocket on that front panel. We're going to need our zippers. So you want to prep up your zippers. Always put your zipper pulls on your zippers so that you don't forget. And we've got 3 zippers, one of which has got 2 pulls. So when you put them on, if you haven't done that before, you want to put them on from each end rather than both on the same end, so that they open and close nicely. Also going to need some rivets, but that's optional. You don't have to use rivets. Some strap ends, which are also optional. 2 1-inch sliders and 2 1-inch rectangle rings. For the monster version as well, we're going to have our horn pieces as well. And it's worth noting that if you're doing the monster, a couple of the pattern pieces swap out. That's all explained in the pattern. It's mainly so that this front panel, the zipper pocket, can drop down, and then you have a smaller piece for that bottom zipper pocket. Hopefully that all makes sense. I'm also going to be adding in teeth. This is not in the pattern, but I will show you how I did it when we get to it. But first of all, we're going to jump onto the applique part of the monster. So I have done one side already. I've done this eye, and I'm going to show you how I did it with this one. Now I have cut these out of using my Cricut maker. The pattern comes with SVGs, so that's really easy to do. If you don't have a maker, there also comes with a projector, and if you don't have a projector, it does of course come with your regular PDF that you can print off and cut out. So I have prepped it up with double-sided on the back of each piece. So I'm just going to take those off. This is sewing quilter's tape, quilter's double-sided tape, rather than regular double-sided tape, because if you use regular double-sided tape, it could gum up your machine, and we don't want that to happen. Now, to get the layout of my monster face, I have used my template. So this is the template that you'll get with the monster. Now, obviously, if you're not using the monster or not making the monster, you don't need to follow this bit step by step. Do let me know if you're watching as well. I can see that I've got a couple of viewers. Do say hello, and if you're watching on replay, do put hashtag replay and I can say hello. So this is the monster template. So I've just laid it on, and as you might be able to see, I've cut around with a scalpel around some of those key points so that I can peel them back, and then I've gone in and I've drawn with a friction pen in those areas. And I've just done like a little semicircle there. It's not really as important for the top ones because it's going to be harder to see, of course. The eyebrows I've done, and I've done the other eye. Obviously the other eye is already stitched on. With the eyebrow, because it is quite a small slither, I did fabric glue that on with the tiniest bit of glue just to keep that in place for when you're doing your applique. So I've made my marks. And I've got my double side on the back of my pieces, and I'm just going to line those up. There's a line here, I don't know if you can see it, but I've drawn on with my friction pen. It's a bit tricky against this print, I do apologise for that. And I'm just going to place that on. I've used a friction pen so that if any marks do stay on there, I can take them off after with hairdryer or an iron. And I'm just going to pull off the back of the other double-sided. And I'm going to make sure that's nicely lined up. Now you don't have to follow the pattern exactly as I've placed it on the template. You can do the eye exactly how you want to do it. You know, if you want to have it slightly angled like I've done there, then you can do so. Just going to check that that's lined up. It's not quite, a bit tricky to see from that angle. Okay, then we've got our other bit of the eye, and you can change up these colours as you want to, use different fabrics. I would just say that obviously it needs to be non-fraying, or you need to put an interfacing on the back to stop it fraying. That's right. Yeah, and then we've got the little eyeball bit, the shine of the eye, if you like. Okay, we're going to move over to the sewing machine and we're going to start stitching that on. So I've got a Microtex needle in, and I'm going to do this on a 3 stitch length, and I'm using black thread, but of course you can choose whatever thread you like. I am using Gutterman Mara today, and I'm going to start by sewing around the outside of the eye, and I've lined up the edge of my foot so that the needle is quite far over. It's on a 3 over, and I'm using the edge of my foot as my guide to see where I'm sewing. And I'm not doing a backwards and forward stitch, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So the aim of this game is slow and steady. Just keep turning the work. Okay, so I've lifted the needle and the foot, and I've pulled the work off and cut the threads. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over, and we're going to pull that thread, and we're going to tie that. This means that you get no kind of bulkiness on that front panel. You can't see the stop and the start of the threads. Also makes it even more secure. Cut those threads. Then we're going to go back and we're going to carry on doing the other pieces. Just make sure that that little bit's tucked in. And I'm going to go around that middle eyeball. This is one of those projects, it does take some time, but it really looks good when it's done. So it's definitely worth the time and effort that goes into it. Okay, so I've done that one eyebrow over here, and then we're going to move over to this eyebrow. And we're going to start, let's find my thread. We're going to start there. Hold the thread. Okay, so now we've got our monster face applique done. We're going to pop across to do the horns. Now there's 2 different ways that you can do the horns. You can either cut them so that they are finished, so you're just going to have the raw edges. You know, if you're using a vinyl or a glitter, a bonded fabric, something like that that doesn't fray, then you can do that. Or you can turn them through. So we're going to turn them through. So I've cut these out again on my Cricut, but you can cut them with scissors or rotary blade as well. and I'm going to place them right sides together, and we're going to sew 1 centimetre from the edge on those kind of almost 3, that's a point, isn't it, obviously, so those 2 edges. Leave this one or these 2 open. Okay, then we're going to repeat that with the other horn. So then we're going to trim those edges down, and we're going to snip into that corner so that we can turn it. So we're going to trim the seam allowance down, snip the corner, and then carry on onto the other side. We're also going to trim a little bit more of those corners off so that it makes it a bit easier for turning. And we're going to do the same with the other one. Now we're going to turn it through. Okay, so we've got the 2 horns, and then what we can do is we can put a little bit of stuffing in there. I don't have any stuffing, but I do have a little bit of wadding. So I'm going to put a little bit of wadding in there just to give it a little bit of oomph. Okay, so we've got our horns and they've got the stuffing inside. We're going to put them to one side. So this is what I'm using for my lining. Okay, so we're going to place that right sides down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle of the zipper pocket and the middle of the front panel. I'm just going to do a couple of creases, place my template on so I can see where my zipper pocket is going to be. And we want to leave 1.5 centimetres at the top. Okay, I'm going to pin that in place. Oops. So we've got that piece on. Lay that over the top again, and we're going to draw on our zipper pocket. Now it's really important that you get this line straight. So if you are not sure that you've drawn this out straight, then just use a ruler and make sure that this is 1 centimetre wide. Okay, so I've got that drawn on. Now with the regular Luna, you're going to have already fused your fusible foam to the back. With this one, I'm going to do it this way round, but you can still do it beforehand. I'm just going to go ahead and do this first. Start in the middle. I didn't hold my thread, did I? Come back. Hold the thread. Just doing a locking stitch, and then off we go. Now about 1 inch from the end, I'm going to go down to about 1.5. Take that pin out now. And that's going to help us get really nice and close, if not spot on, which it has, to that corner. It also is going to mean that we have a nice crisp corner when we turn it. Again, up to the next corner, lift the foot, turn the work with the needle down, go about 1 inch, and then increase the stitch length till we're about 1 inch from the end. Decrease the stitch length. I'm going to increase up to 2.5. Okay, so we've got that ready now, and then we're going to cut the middle of that box. And we're going to cut a line, sort of a triangle at one end, triangle at the other end, and then a line that goes down the middle. Okay, like so. We're going to cut into those corners. You want to make sure that you're leaving about 1 millimetre away from the stitches so that you don't cut into those stitches. So cut that, and I'm going to push that through. And then we're going to grab the iron and we're going to just press that in place. So I'm going to push that bottom piece, press that bottom piece first. And we're trying to pull it so that you can't see it from the front. Now there's a little trick as well in a minute, because if you're doing the regular Luna and you've fused your foam to the back, this can be a bit tricky. So I'll show you when I've got I'm going to fuse my foam on in a second, and you'll see what I do. Right, now, so then we've got our opening. Then we're going to put on our fleece backing, fusible, not fleece, foam, fusible foam. And this is another of the pattern pieces that replaces one in the main if you're using the monster. Okay, so now what we can do, and you can do this if you're doing the main Luna as well, and not doing the monster, you could hold off putting on your fusible foam. Then we're going to fuse that foam to our panel. Then on the back, we want to make sure that that's all pulled up nicely. Now, what I have done on my other one is I used a little bit of glue, or you could use double-sided, which I've got here. I'm going to use this slightly stronger double-sided. So put that on there. And peel it off. And then you can use that to pull up onto to get it away from that away from that edge, to keep the lining out of the way. And then when we come to sew up the pocket in a little bit, we can take it off if we need to, because it's just double-sided. Can you see that? That's pulled it really nicely up from that top edge. So then we're going to lay the zip underneath. One thing I have done, actually one thing I haven't done, which I will do, if I can find my lighter, is I've placed in the teeth. Now I always do this on my zips, so if you've seen me do this before, you've probably seen this, but you can actually, on most zips, feed the teeth into each other. You might have to sort of wiggle it around a bit. And that just helps when you're stitching to keep that closed. You see that? Makes it a lot easier. And I'm going to burn the ends. Be super careful, obviously, when you do this. Okay, so we want to get our double-sided again. And we want to place our zipper, let's pull it closed a bit, on the back. I'm going to use my thin double-sided this double-sided tape this time. Okay, so I want to pull off the double-sided. So I want to line that up as best I can from the back. Turn it over, see how we are with it all, and tweak it. Now, something I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to add in some teeth at the top. So I'm just going to put that to one side now, that's ready to go. A little bit of glittery canvas. This is brilliant. I use Creative Craft Supplies in the UK, and it's like glitter bonded to canvas, but it doesn't fray. So I've drawn my teeth out with got about a 1 centimetre seam allowance at the bottom, and then I've drawn out 2 centimetres going into one and just a triangle. So I'm going to stitch around that line. That is with a friction pen. So if it doesn't come off for some reason, that can be the underneath. So that's going to be fine. And I'm going to pop over to my machine. Okay, so I'm going to increase my stitch length to a 3, I think. And I'm going to stitch exactly on that line. I'm not turning these, they're going to have a raw edge. And I've also put double-sided in between so that they don't move around. Just going to help a little bit. So that's not too bad. I'm going to cut around those quite close to the edge. A couple of centimetres at the top, going down, and that's about 3 centimetres long as well. And then what we can do is we can just slide those teeth in where we want them to go. So where do we want them to go? Really cute. Tweak that zip so that that's nicely in the middle. It's important to get this right. This is the bit that's gonna really, you know, take it to another level. If you get the zipper straight, it's going to make a difference. I'm going to switch over to my zipper foot now. I'm going to do that bottom edge first. And again, I'm not starting on a corner in the middle. I'm going to start on that bottom, just off of the corner. So we got our teeth in, got a little zipper in. She can feed him snacks. I'm going to flip it over and we're going to finish off that zipper pocket. I think I'm probably going to have to pull that double-sided off, which is no biggie. Might even take it off now if I can. If it's going to let me. There we go, it's torn away. Brilliant. And now, just like we do normally, we're going to sew around those 3 edges to enclose the pocket. Get some pins. And I'm going to keep my zipper foot on just so I can get in there. And I'm going to sew it from the top side, from the right side. So there we go, we're up to there. Then we're going to move across to our straps. Now I'm going to do the straps a little bit differently to the pattern. The pattern, where did I get my... So in the pattern, it tells you to draw a line down the middle and then fold your fabric in to meet that line. Then you fold it again, and that's how you make your strap. There's a video on my tutorial. No, there's a tutorial on my channel. Thanks, Jane. There's a tutorial on my channel that shows you how to make straps that go, you know, a crossbody strap. So it shows you in there how to do that as well. When you do the closed end, so what it tells you to do is you can either press that middle line, or you can draw it. Then you open it up, because on the, is it the longer strap or the shorter strap? I think it's the shortest, no, the longer straps. Yeah, on the longer straps, you want to enclose both ends. So you imagine that this was a really long strap. You're then going to want to sew on those 2 short ends. So I'm going to show you quickly how to do that in case you're going to do that same technique. Right, so if you're doing those short ends, what you want to do, well, if you're doing the same method as in the pattern, I should say, then you want to then just sew closed those 2 short ends. Go along, cast off, and then you're going to do the same on the other end for the longer strap. Okay, and then what you want to do is we're going to cut the threads, because that's annoying. Trim it at an angle, cut the seam allowance down, trim it at the other angle. And then, because you've already have pressed it, you're going to turn it the right way out. Poke out that corner carefully if you're using scissors. And the other end, you're going to do the same. And then you're going to fold those two bits in. Now, as you fold them in, you want to open up that seam allowance. You see that? I'm going to open up that seam allowance, finger press it open, and then fold it in so that the raw edges are now meeting up with that middle creased line. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, then you end up with your enclosed ends strap. Then you want to do the same on the other end. I'm showing it this way because I'm going to do it slightly different, and you may want to do it the other way as well, but I'm going to do it, I don't know. But then you've got options. Because we like to have options, don't we? So that is what you would do, and then you would fold that all, make sure that's all still 1 inch, and top stitch around the edge to make your 2 long straps. Okay? But we're not going to do it that way. We are going to do it another way. So to do the enclosed ends, what I'm doing is I am doing half vinyl, so this is my vinyl, this is So Hot again, and half cotton. And the vinyl I've interfaced with woven so that it doesn't stretch, and the cotton I've interfaced with non-woven. Okay, I'm going to place them right sides together, and these I have cut at, is it 2 inches? Always get in a fluster. Yeah, 2 inches wide, okay, by the length as mentioned in the pattern. And you want to place them right sides together. What you want to do is you want to sew ½ inch seam allowance, 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then ½ inch all the way down. But this first bit we're only going to do about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. Then what we're going to do is we're going to snip into those corners. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that. Get rid of some of that seam allowance and get rid of that. Also, we're going to snip the foam, we'll do the cotton. We're going to snip that down even further. Okay, so it's got a stepped seam allowance there. Get rid of that. Then we're going to turn it the right way out. Try and get that nice and looking good. Wiggle it a bit. You can hammer those corners as well. Okay, so that's one end, and then we do the other one. And these are the straps which go, they're kind of loose until the end when you put it all together. That's why both ends are finished. These are not the straps with the strap ends on. If you weren't using the strap ends, or you didn't want to use that bit of hardware, you could do this as well to finish it, or you should do this to finish it, I should say, or do the other technique like it says in the pattern. So then when you've done that, then what you want to do is you want to flip it and clip all the way down that folded edge that you've just sewn. So we're going to clip all the way down there to keep that nice and together, straight, flat. Okay, so that's all clipped. Then on the other side, because obviously it's still open and a bit like the raw edges, we're going to fold that in to meet that seam allowance underneath. Can you see that? So that should match up because you've done that ½ inch seam allowance That should match up, and then you fold that in. Now I do have a bit of advantage with this fabric because it's got nice lines, so I can follow those lines a little bit. Just if you're doing this technique, just be sure to make sure that it's staying the same width as you go along, because there could be a tendency for it to go off. You could use double-sided on the inside as well. Okay, so that's all clipped together. Then we're going to top stitch all the way around. What I'm going to do, because it's vinyl and I don't want it to stretch, is I'm going to go along the short edge all the way down that long edge, and then I'm going to pick up and I'm going to start again from that same end and go down in the same direction. If you do it that way, it's less likely to twist and curl, which you can get sometimes with the vinyl. So there we've got our strap. Let's cut off those ends of thread. And there it's half vinyl and half cotton. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that for the other 3 straps that we need to do. So there's going to be another one with 2 closed ends, and then I'm going to do 2 of the shorter straps, and they are going to be open-ended because I'm going to use the strap ends. If you're not using the strap ends, then you want to make 1 closed end of each. Okay, so we're going to move along, and we're going to move along to the strap connectors and the handle. They are made in a very similar way. So the handle is going to be quite thin. So you do the same thing, fold it in half. It's open-ended, so you don't need to worry about that. Fold it in, and press. Put some clips on it, just to keep it in place, and pop to one side. And then we're going to do our strap connectors in the same way. Now I've made these out of cotton, as you can see. You could use vinyl, but honestly when you get to that bit of the bag, because it's going to be at the base of the bag, you're going to have quite a lot going on there when it gets to that bit. You're going to have if you're using vinyl for the side, you're going to have the vinyl layer, you're going to have the strap connector layers, the seam allowance and the back. So I do recommend you make this bit out of the quilting cotton. Okay, so then we're going to top stitch down each long edge of all those 3. So the 2 strap connectors and the handle. Okay, so we've got our strap connectors and we've got our handle. What I like to do at this stage is just pop on those rectangle rings. And pop a clip in. And then we can put it to one side. Next we're going to move along to the back panel. So we've got the top of the back and we've got the bottom of the back. And what we want to do is we're going to attach the top to that bottom panel. Now it's worth noting that the pattern for the top is a little bit longer, a little bit wider than the bottom piece, and that's because when it flips up it does actually match up, so you have to make that a little bit longer due to the angles. So we're going to clip that in place. we're going to sew that seam with a 2.5 length stitch and 1 centimetre from that edge. Then when you flip that up, can you see that those angles now match? Then we're going to top stitch it. We're going to push the seam allowance down to the bottom of the bag, and we're going to top stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge on the cotton side. Okay, so there you go, that is ready to go. Now we need to put on the fusible foam to the back. So flip it over, and we want to grab our foam piece, and we're going to place that on there. And if you're using quilting cotton for the top, you're not going to need to do this technique. I'm obviously only got it at the bottom, so I'm going to turn it over as best I can and press from this side, because that's the best way to get to the glue on the foam. Obviously, I can't use the iron on the vinyl, and I could use it from the back, but the heat won't go through and it won't fuse well enough. So what you can do, and this is from Pink Pony Designs on YouTube, I'll pop a link in the description so you can take a look at the original video. And we're going to use another piece of interfacing, can be any interfacing, lightweight, whatever you've got. It doesn't matter if it's a bit heavier, that's going to give it more structure anyway. You just don't want it too heavy to get through your machine, of course. So, because it's not going to stick to that top bit very well, we're going to take a piece of interfacing, and our interfacing is the same size as the outer piece, not the smaller foam which has got the seam allowance cut off. Now, a little mouse has stolen a bit, not really, but that's what my teacher used to say. A little mouse has come along and stolen a bit off the bottom because this was a bit of a scrap. That's fine, because this end has got the quilting cotton. That's going to be pretty secure anyway. So then what you do is you iron it to the back of the foam. Then you're going to use the interfacing. You see that the foam is sandwiched in between. So you've got the quilting cotton, the foam, and then the interfacing. And you're going to use that top bit of interfacing to sandwich the foam by pressing that seam allowance in. Doesn't really matter if you go off. This is going to keep, so it's still going to keep that foam out of the seam allowance for your sewing, which is a huge, huge help when we come to do those curves a bit later. But it means that it can attach nicely to, I've done it a little bit off there, it hasn't got much to bite into, but that's okay again because that's the bit of the quilting cotton. So that's really securely on there now. So if you've got other pieces that you need to do, like the base has got the fusible foam on it as well, and it's tricky to attach to the vinyl, then that's how you can attach it on. I have made my strap keepers. These are the bits that go around the straps to hold those straps in place. They just slide up and down and keep it all nicely neat and tucked in. So I have made those, and to do that I've just done the same way that you would do a regular strap, and it's the same way I showed you before with closing in those ends. So you just want to make 2 of those, and we're going to put that to one side. So we're going to start with doing the lining for the zipper on the lining, I should say. So we've got our pattern piece 4, and our innards are the same whether you're doing the monster or the regular Luna. Okay, that's not going to change. So we're going to grab one of those, and we're also going to grab our zipper pocket, our inner zipper pocket. And try not to drop everything on the floor. And our zip, which is our pattern piece 12. So we've got our pattern piece 4 and our pattern piece 12. And we're going to do the same technique that we did with the other zipper pocket. And we're going to lay our zipper pocket piece, pattern piece 12 I think it was, yeah, inside pocket piece. We're going to lay that on top. It's an inch down from that top edge. Just grab my tape measure and double check that. I'm going to crease that to find the middle, and I'm going to crease that one to find the middle as well. Just realised, so I'm just doing it the wrong side up. You want the right side up and the right side down, so it's right sides together. Okay, I'm going to lay that on top. Then I'm going to lay that pattern piece over the top, pattern piece 4. And I'm going to draw on with a friction pen that pocket hole, the zipper hole. So I'm going to pop a pin in on each end, which I'll probably remove fairly quickly, and then we're going to stitch around that edge. So we are now going to, gosh, you really can't see that, but we're going to cut down the middle like we did before. Okay, so I'm going to push that through that hole. So it's exactly the same technique as we did on the front pocket. Okay, so now we can get our zipper. And I've pushed the teeth in like before on the open end, and I'm going to pop that through. This is a snowflake loving monster, hence the pull. And then from the back, I'm going to line up those two edges, and I'm going to use my double-sided quilter's tape, pop that on the zipper. And now we're going to pull up the bottom of the pocket to meet the top edge, and I'm going to pin it together. Put a pin in there. Now there is a hack that you could do. Some people really don't like it when you can see the sewn up seam on the inside of a birth bag. Okay, so obviously you can do it by hand, but another way to do it, a little hack, is if you cut this as 2 separate pattern pieces, so it wasn't on the fold, and you'd obviously have to add in a bit of seam allowance. And then what you can do is you can leave this bottom edge open, do everything as you normally would, reach through at the end, reach through the pocket, pull out the lining from the back, do it up from the back, pop the lining in, and then pull the pocket out so that then you kind of hide the seam in here. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's another little hack you can get. I'm a bit like, when there's stuff in the bag, no one's going to see it. If you're making to sell, then yeah, you might want to do that. Okay, so I've pinned around the edge, and I'm going to sew around the edge. I'm going to sew from the top with my zipper foot on, because I'm going to go quite close to that edge, because we're sewing with a 1 centimetre seam allowance along there, along that top, and along that other side. Right, now we're going to move on to the other internal pockets. I'm going to grab our pen pocket, and that is pattern piece 5. And I've already marked on, don't know if you can see. So what I've done is I've folded it wrong sides together in the direction that I want the print to go on the bag. Okay, so if you've got a directional print, you want to do that. And then I've made notches and I've folded the pattern so that I've got those lines. Okay, then I've laid it on and I've folded each line back, and there's actually a chalk line. Difficult for you to see, but there's a chalk line on there, on those lines. Okay, because you're going to need those in a little bit. You could use a friction pen, of course. I've used chalk just because the fabric's dark. Then we're going to fold it right sides together, and we're going to sew along each short edge about 1 inch or so on that bottom edge, that short edge, and 1 inch or so that we have a turning hole. And then we're going to cut the corners, turn it through. So this is going to be our pen pocket, and we want to press that. It's the benefit of using chalk, that those marks will stay in there. And then we're going to top stitch along that top edge about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so that's shaping up really nicely. And then we're going to stitch it to our lining panel. So, oh, still got a pin in there. Take that out. Make sure we've got the middle again. Oops. Make a nice crease, so you can see it. And we're going to match up that middle line that I've marked with chalk with that crease. And to be 11 centimetres down from that top edge. And it's important that they're all placed in the right kind of spacing down from the top edge, because it's all been worked out according to like pen lengths and all that kind of stuff. So 11 centimetres down, that's still in the middle. Yeah, pin that in place. Now you want to make sure you do not pin that pocket. So now would be a good time to pull that up out of the way, stick a nice pin in there so we don't sew through. So now we're going to sew around those 3 bottom edges, or the bottom edge and the 2 sides. We're also going to sew those 2 edge kind of lines, not the middle. We're going to do that later, okay? So just those 2 lines. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the cup holder and the phone slip pocket. And again, if you've got directional fabric like me, you want to make sure you pay attention to which way out it is. It doesn't matter so much at this point, but when we turn it over. So you want to fold it right sides together. And we're going to turn that the right way out. Then we're going to press that. Then we want to grab our pattern, and we've got this line here. Okay, so we want to fold it on that line, just like we did before, and we're going to mark that line with some chalk, if I can find some. I'm going to make it straight down that line, which is nice and handy. And that is going to be our phone pocket, and then this part is going to be our cup holder. And now we're going to attach it to our lining. First off, before we attach it, almost forgot, we need to top stitch along that top edge. Now we're going to lay it on top. So we want to make sure that that pocket is still nicely pinned out the way. We're 13.5 centimetres down from the top, and we're going to pin that in place. and then you want to pull that edge back so that the seam allowance is butted to that edge, making sure that that is still nice and straight. Okay, so we're going to baste along those two edges. Okay, so that's basted in place. Then what we need to do is we need to sew along that bottom edge and up that line that we drew. And then that line is going to go from the middle of your pocket, it's basically the middle, up to join up with that middle line on your pen pocket. Does that make sense? Hopefully it will when you see me doing it. And we're going to sew along this edge and up the middle of the two pockets, the two slip pockets. So now we've got a little slip pocket there, we've got a big pocket here to put our water bottle in, and we've got our 4 pen pockets along the top, because we've just made that intersection with that other stitch line. Okay, so that's all our inside pockets now. We can take that pin out and we're going to put that to one side. Right, now we're going to move on to the zipper panels. So we're going to grab our pieces for that. And this is our pattern piece 9s, okay? And we want to grab our zipper that has got the 2 pulls on. When you put your 2 pulls on, try and make sure that there's no kind of weird extra teeth in there. You want it to be as flush as possible and as neat as possible. Sometimes it takes me a few goes to get it right. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to place the zipper right side down to the outer pattern piece 9, wasn't it? Yeah. I'm going to use my double-sided tape. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that you're putting it on the right side. So on the pattern piece, it has got which side is the skinnier side. So you want to make sure, it explains it in instructions as well, that the skinnier side is the bit that goes on the zipper and the centimetre seam allowance goes to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to put my zipper onto this side. Right side's down, and we're going to baste that in place, and we're going to baste that about 1/2 centimetre within the seam allowance, or 2/8 of an inch. Okay, then we want to grab our lining, and we want to lay our lining right sides down. I'm going to switch to a zipper foot for this, because we're then going to stitch that in place. And I think I'm going to put some more tape down just to be sure. So we're sewing the zipper on, that seam on 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so that's one side of our zipper on, as you can see. Then we want to pull that back and we want to top stitch along that edge. By doing that now, that's going to help us a little bit, keep it out of the way for the other side. Okay, so then we're going to repeat that with the other side of the zipper. And then, just like before, I'm going to flip it over And I'm going to get my lining and I'm going to get some more tape. And then we're going to open up the lining and the top panel, and we're going to top stitch all the way along that edge, just like we did before. We're pulling the lining and the top fabric together, pushing that foam against that seam to get it really nice and stable. Then what we need to do is we need to attach our base panels to the edge of this zipper panel. So we've got our two base panels. I have used this vinyl again for my base, and I've done the same technique that I did before with the pink pony designs. So we want to take our base panel and we're going to place it right sides down, and we're going to sew along that edge. You want to make sure that you start and stop where the seam allowance is. This is so that later on when we come to sew it to the bag, you can get in and you can sew the other bits. It will all become clear. I'm going to clip that in place. Then we're going to repeat that for the other side while we're here. Lay that vinyl pattern, or the bottom, the base panel on top, right side down, clip it in place, and we're sewing through the zipper panel lining as well. Now I do want to put in one of my labels, so let me just grab one of those. Before I do that, actually, I'm just going to baste that in place. It's going to make life a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to sew along that edge, starting and stopping just where the seam allowance hits. Then we're going to flip it over and we're going to get our lining pieces, and we're going to sew those on the same piece, right sides together, along those two ends. Okay, so we do this end first, and then we'll pop over to the other end. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it from that top edge again, because of that foam. It's going to make it a lot easier. You could put in double-sided tape actually if you wanted to. Keep that in place. I'm going to sew over that line just next to it. That's the line that I've just stitched. So I'm going to flip those up out of the way. And I'm going to pop a quick clip in that top just to make sure it doesn't get in the way of the next line of stitching. Go to the other side, flip it over, place the lining right sides together, flip it over again, and sew from that top edge, not sewing in the seam allowance. Okay, flip that over and clip that out of the way again. Clip those two together, and then we're going to top stitch the two edges. You don't have to top stitch. One thing you might want to do actually is, what you can do, just clip that out of the way, but actually what we want to do is we want to push the lining out of the way when we top stitch, so that when we come to sew it up later, we can actually get in there and do that. So we're going to top stitch along this edge, not in the seam allowance, and we've got that lining flipped up. So can you see the lining is going towards the zipper? So we'll clip that up out of the way. Oops. And this is kind of a faux top stitch, but it makes it look a bit nicer. and top stitch along that edge. I'm going to change over to the blue thread for that. Now we're starting to go through a few layers on this one now, so we'll see how we go. To bend that up to get that in the machine, and I'm pushing the seam allowance down towards this base vinyl panel, and like I say, I'm actually going to move my needle over. Yeah, 3. And like I say, I'm starting it, where are we? Starting it in, not in the seam allowance. So I've left a centimetre at this top edge with no sewing. Okay, then we're going to do the same with the other side. And what we want to do, we push this to one side. We're going to take our back piece, our back panel, and we're going to line up and attach our straps. So we want to grab the straps with the open end, or the closed end if you're using the strap ends. Make sure I've got them going the right way, which is that way, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so these are the straps that kind of come down over your body. These are the shorter straps. So we want to make sure they're at an angle. We're going to do that in a sec. We're just going to grab the handle, and we're going to find the middle point of our top piece. I'm going to use my front pattern piece to find my middle. Okay, so you want to find the middle of your back panel, and we're going to place our handle on. Let's mark that through to the other side in the seam allowance, and we're going to place our handle on so that it is a 1 inch gap between the middle. Okay, and we want to place it on so that there is an overhang of 3 centimetres, which equates to 1.25 inches overhanging. Feels weird, but it does make sense a bit later on. Okay, so then we're going to baste that in place. Then we're going to place on our straps. So the inner edge of each strap should be 1.75 inches from the centre of the back panel. So we've got our notch there, 1.75 inches is there, and 1.75 inches is there. Put some pins in, and the overhang needs to be 4 centimetres. I do apologise, I flip between centimetres and inches. There's the other one. Double check that I've got the lines going the right way. Yes, I have. Now I'm going to have my fabric going the right way out, but you could of course have your vinyl. You can choose which way you want to have it. So I'm going to line that up with the pins at the top, and then you want to measure down. And you want to measure down 15 centimetres from that middle notch. Put it under. 15 centimetres in the middle, pop a pin, and that is where, once it's lined up at the top, your straps kind of go at an angle. Does that make sense? That makes the angle correct at the top and lines it all up. Okay, so the middle, that pin that I popped in, I think it's quite difficult for you to see, that's 15 centimetres down, and then that gets that angle correct. Then you want to pop a pin in or a clip. Let's see if I can get away with a pin. I'm going to keep those other pins in there just for now so I can see what I'm doing in case anything moves, and I'm going to baste those in place. There we've got our straps and our handle basted, our top straps and our handle basted. Then we want to move along to our strap connectors that we made earlier, and we're going to line those up at the bottom. Now, depending on whether you've got the printed pattern or the digital pattern does have the notches on, but I believe that the printed pattern may not, so huge apologies about that. The notch needs to be, if you drew a straight line from that edge, the notch is 2 centimeters up. Okay, so mine is going to be there on that end, and on the other end it's going to be, let's do it like that, there. Put those straps out of the way. And again, they need to be at an angle. We want to look back at our strap connector pattern. So on this strap connector, can you see they've got those notches? So when you fold it up, you're going to have the notches on the different sides, okay? So one side is going to have this notch. I'll make it a bit closer in a second. And then the other side has got this notch. You see? So you can see they're at different lengths from the end. This is so that when you place it on, following this notch, it's going to be at an angle. Does that make sense? So we're going to place it that way, so it's right sides together. And this notch on the strap connector is going to match up with the edge, the raw edge, and this notch on the strap connector is going to match up with the notch on the back panel. Hopefully that's all clear. I'm just going to flip that one over to the other side because I want the raw edges, not raw edges, the folded edges, the folded in edges to be at the bottom. So I'm going to do the same with this one, with this strap. Then might need to be a clip because it's so thick. And we're going to do the other side. Hopefully you can see okay with this fabric and it's not too kind of crazy for you to look at. And again, we're going to baste those in place. Now, the other thing you can do before putting them on is you can sew up close to your rectangle ring. I'm going to pop a rivet in there later, so I'm not going to do that bit. But if you aren't using rivets, then you may want to sew close to that. You can still do it now once you've basted it in. So just bear that in mind. So let's move that out of the way a second. And we're going to find the middle of our lining. And I'm going to mark it on the outside, the right side, and the inside, just to make sure it's really nice and clear. And we've got those notches, which is where the zipper panel ends. So we want to make sure those are really nice and clear. Anything you can do to help yourself is going to be very useful for the the next few stages. Again, on this panel, we've got that mark that we put earlier, and we want to make sure we've got the bottom mark really nice and clear. Then we want to also mark the middle of the front panel. Want to do the back lining piece. To get our zipper panel, we need to find the middle of our zipper panel. Start to place it all together. So one thing we want to make sure we do is that we baste on, because we're doing the monster version, we want to make sure we baste on our ears or horns. You can flip them around. I think it was Kimberly, one of my testers, flipped her horns around and they look like ears. They look so cute. And she made them go like that. Oops. Can't do it now. Like that. Which I thought was really cute. Or you can do it like that. Maybe I'll do it like ears again. It does look quite cute. Let's do it like that. So we've got our notch marks from our pattern. So we know where to put them. So I'm going to put that one there. Clip it in place. So we want to snip into the corners around the bottom and around the top, just to make it a bit easier, especially on these two bottom corners. So we're going to snip about 5 millimeters, half a centimetre, along that edge and along that top edge a little bit. Okay, so do that on the back and the front, and the back. And then we also want to do that on the lining pieces. And then we want to grab, finally, the last lining. Okay, now is the matching up. So we're going to take the front panel and our zipper panel, and we want to match up the middle of our zipper panel with the middle of our front panel. Okay, so figure out which, if you've got a label, then you want to figure out which way you want the label to be. And we're going to match up that middle notch with the middle. And we're going through both the lining and the outer fabric. Okay, so we want to put the middle of the notch right sides together with that middle notch there. And we'll pop a clip. And we're going to pin a clip around that edge, and then the edge of the zipper panel, where the zipper panel meets the base, is going to match up with that notch there. So we can pop a pin or clip in there so we can see what we're doing. And then we're going to follow it round, and we're going to match up the other side where the base meets. And then we're going to keep going and match up those seams all the way around that top edge. having said that about doing the next live next week, I think it would be good if I did it this week, so that if you want to get on, you can. So I will let you know very soon when that's going to be. Okay, so we've pinned around there, and then we're going to sew around there, and we're going to make sure we're stopping where that base panel starts. So we're starting where the base panel starts, going around, and we're stopping where the next one starts. And we're basting that, so we're basting within the seam allowance. Make sure that lining, do not want to catch that lining as well with the base panel. Make sure that's all in place. There we go. And we're going to stop just before that lining, or the base, sorry. So we've got our front panel all stitched up, and we've basted on our zipper panel at the top. Then we're going to get our front lining piece, and we're going to place it right sides down. So you want to squish in that zipper panel, place it right sides down, and I've matched up that top notch and the side notch where the lining, the base meets, sorry. Then we're going to move around, and we're going to match up the other side notch as well. So you do have to give it a little bit of a pull and a tug to make it meet, and that notch is going to match up there. And I'm going to put another pin in. Then we want to push and pull, and we're going to match up that curve going all the way around. Because the zip is obviously kind of curled, you do need to kind of push and pull it a little bit. Make sure it's all nicely laying in there. This is where those snips on those curved seams come in handy as well. And you want to make sure, can you see that that was trying to kind of rock up a bit? You want to make sure that that's all lying nice and flat. The basting definitely helps, so you don't have 3 million pins to deal with. I always think it matters less if it kind of scrunches up in the lining, and more obviously on the outer fabric, so just bear that in mind as you're working your way around. Ideally it won't be creasing in either layer, but if there has to be a choice. Okay, so keep going. Try and get that nice and flat. Okay, so I think that is pinned. Might add a couple more pins up there for good measure. And my foam is coming away from my fabric because I've manipulated the fabric quite a lot, so I'm just going to have to bear that in mind when I sew it in a second. Right, and we're going to sew around. Now, because I'm using cotton, I'm going to make sure it's at a 2.5, it was a 3. If I was using vinyl, then I would change that to a 3 for the structured seams. Okay, so we're going to start off. And we're going to go around that top edge. this down so it's nice and taut. And we've come to the end, so I'm just going to rewind, cast off. Just going to double check that I haven't caught anything. So I'm going to flip it the right way out. See what my seam's like. It's looking good, looking good. Haven't caught anything. No, 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 we're good. Okay, let's flip it. So that's how the seam's looking at the moment. Let's flip it the wrong way again. And we're going to use that zipper foot to get in there a bit closer and do our second line of stitching. Take 2. Just going to check that I haven't caught any of the lining. No, that's all looking good. And we're going to do it a little bit close to it. So it's not on top, just close to it. And this is what you should do with your, if you're using vinyl anyway, because this makes your seams a bit stronger. So we've stitched around the outside, and now we're going to, I'm just going to get rid of that thread while we're here. Now we're going to flip that the right way. Okay, so I'm going to pull that out the right way. This is when we see if we've caught anything. And we have caught a little something there. That's not ideal. Can you see? Along there. But that's okay. I think that might be in the second lot of stitching. So I'm going to quickly unpick that. Okay, so this time we haven't caught it badly, I don't think, in any way. So let's see what we look like on the outside. Hopefully that's all going to be looking good now. There we go. We haven't caught it. Just pull those threads out. Okay, so that's looking really nice and smooth now. We're going to open up our zipper at this stage. Now we are going to baste the back panel. Okay, so we've got our front panel in there, and we're going to attach our back panel, and we're going to do just like we did before. So we want to line up our middle notch on the zipper panel with our middle notch on the back panel, like so, and we're going to pin it around just like we did before. We are going to baste in that seam again. Ooh. If you haven't seen a hump jumper before, it's just basically a couple, actually I'm going to flip it up the other way. This one is basically 3 different layers of plastic, and you can adjust it according to the height that you need to go over, and it just means that the presser foot is evenly across rather than it being at an angle. You see it's at an angle now, but if we put that under there, it's at the same height as the bit it's going over, which means that it can have less, with, you know, ideally it will have less skipped stitches. Oh, and then it just pops out. What's making me jump? And then it just pops out the other side. So I'm going going to take out my pins. Right, I've just noticed that I've caught that bit of lining, so I'm just going to undo that. No, I can't undo it like that. I'm going to snip it because I don't want that to, especially because it's the basting stitch. So I want to make sure that lining is clear. Double check the other side. Yeah, it's done it the other side, so I'm just going to snip that. All good. Right. Now we are going to double check our zippers open. Then we're going to turn it around so that the front, that's the front with our face, is facing up. Then we're going to grab our back lining piece and we're going to squish this down. So we're doing just like we did before, but on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to squish that down. Now we're going to match up that notch with the side. That's gone very faint because I used a friction pen, but it is there. Okay, so we're going to carry on pinning that together. Just pulling that fabric out of the way, making sure the main thing when you're pinning and sewing this is that you keep the bit that you're working on flat. All those layers, you can feel it with your fingers, are flat, okay? That is the main thing that we're trying to achieve on each little bit. So now that that's flat, we can move along, go back up to here. Oh, I just chucked some. Oh, my little cactus has gone flying. Yeah, so it's the main thing is that little bit that you're working on is flat. Okay. You can put your hand inside as well to encourage that zipper bit to be flat. Yeah, this isn't a beginner's bag for sure. This is definitely an intermediate and above. Just because, purely because of these seams, how you encase these seams. So I'm pushing that bit out of the way that's got the foam on it, pushing that out of the way, making that flat. Popping that pin in. Okay. Keeping on going. Got my hand inside the bag, so my fingers are sticking out there. So I can feel as we go, I can move my hand around. And it's 1 centimetre seam allowance, of course, as we sew this. I'm going to crank the needle in so it's in the right place to start, and then I can take that pin out. Again, really important that you don't put any strain on that needle. Like I say, that is when your timing is going to go out. Now we're going to turn it the right way out. So we're going to reach in, pull that through, like so. Ooh. Okay, so we've got straps. You can see it's coming together now. We've got our innards of the bag that we made the other day. And it's starting to really resemble the bag now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our rivets onto these top straps. So what you want to do is you want to reach inside with your hand, and really tricky for me to show you. You want to make sure your excess, that's why there is so much excess, you want to make sure your excess is facing down. So the excess of the strap is kind of there. Okay? Same with the handles, facing down to your bag and the other strap. Then we're going to put our rivets in. Now, I am going to mark these on first, and I'm going to make sure that the strap is lying at the angle that it wants to be, so that you're not sort of putting the rivet in. You don't want to make the strap underneath the seam allowance go straight. Okay, that's really important, because that's going to help. If you put it in the wrong angle, then obviously it's going to kind of tuck and do something weird. Okay, so make sure seam allowance is nicely, or seam is nicely pushed out. And then we're going to get a pen. Let's use a friction pen and a little ruler. And we are going to mark it 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch below the strap, and then another 1.5 centimetres below that. So of course I've got inches. I'll go on my tape measure. That's going to be much more helpful. Where did I put it? There we go. So we're going to follow that strap line, and we're going to mark that down 1 centimetre and hopefully make it in the middle. Let's just double check. There. And then we're going to make it 1.5 centimetres below that. And again, I want to make sure that it's following that line. So I'm going to kind of go like that and like that. Okay, I'm going to do the same on the other side. It was about there, wasn't it? That's the middle. Pull that strap out. Oh, look at that, spot on. And going at an angle again, 1.5 centimetres. Then you just want to check visually that that is looking good. That's looking pretty good. Then you want to do the same with your handle, and you want to put those again 1 centimetre down from the top, or 3/8 of an inch in the middle. So we're going to pop in the hole punch die into my press. So want to, like I say, make sure it's all lying nice and flat. Double check you haven't got your lining caught in there. You do not want your lining caught in there. Hopefully you can see that okay. One hole done. And the other hole is coming up. There we go, 2 holes. Then we're going to do the handles. Again, this is optional, guys. You don't have to do these rivets. If you're looking at this and thinking, oh, that's a bit tricky and annoying to get into, you're not wrong. It is a bit annoying to get into, but it does give your bag a really cool professional finish. But like I say, it's optional. Okay, now we can turn that over and make it into the rivet press. Right, so I've got my other coloured rivets here, my silver ones, which are a lot cheaper than my rainbow ones. And because you don't see the back of these rivets in particular, I'm going to swap the back of the rainbow for the silver. So obviously we want the rainbow on the outside, so put that rivet in, make sure it's going through to that strap where I want it to, and then I want to pop on the silver back. Right, we've got all our rivets in there, can you see? Ready to be pressed now. So just pop them in. There we go, that is all our rivets in. Now we're going to sew up the bottom of our bag. So we want to turn it the wrong way out. So we've got it the lining way out, okay? Now, as you can imagine, we're now going to sew up the bottom of the bag. Make sure your straps are nicely in there so they don't get caught. And we're going to, first of all, sew up that bottom seam, right sides together, along that edge. Open that seam up, and we're going to match up our outside panels, not the lining. So you want to pull the lining down and out of the way. In fact, I'm going to clip that to the zipper so that I know it's out of the way. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Clip the zipper, the lining piece to the zipper so it's out of my way. Then we're going to match up each side with the middle seam. Okay, so match that up, push open our seam allowance. If you were doing bag feet, you're going to want to insert those now. Okay, we're not on this bag, but if you were, that's when you're going to do that. Okay, so we place that right sides together, match up that notch and put a clip in. And we're going to match it up all the way around, just like we did on the top edge. Now, if when you do this, you find that you've got an excess, it's not a fault of the pattern. It just means that you might have slightly gone out of the seam allowance on the top. That's absolutely fine. All you need to do is, if you find that you've got excess along this outside seam, then you want to make this bottom seam a little bit smaller. So just sew another line, or unpick that and sew another line this side. If you find that it's the other way and you've got you've got excess on this one, the front panel, then you want to make this seam smaller. Okay, you basically adjust it to fit. It's going to be easier if we do the back panel first, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to keep that still clipped up in case any of those clips stay in, and I'm going to clip around this top edge. And we're going to sew that edge. Again, making sure that that lining base is out of the way. I'm going to clip that up there with the other panel, so it's nicely out of the way. And the other side, clip that all up there so that it can't get stuck under the machine where you don't want it to. So you want to sew the back one first, and that is because we're going to stick our rivets in now for these strap connectors. So just like before, we've got this lovely lump of excess, and we're going to rivet that down to the sides of the bag. I'm going to do it 1 centimetre, and then I'm going to do it 1.5 centimetres from that one. So you want to make sure that you port those two in. And again, you're obviously going in the middle of that strap connector. Can you see why now I stopped halfway through and changed to this? Because if you tried to do this from the top, yes, it's open still, but it's just going to be even harder to get in there. And you have to do this after the seam's done, of course. Otherwise you can't get to it at all. You can't even do it, really. Right, now, of course, we're going to do the other side, as you may have guessed. So we want to match up that notch on the back panel with that seam, middle seam, and clip it all the way around. Now we're going to pop back to the machine and we're going to sew that seam up. Right, so we've sewn that seam going around. Next, we're going to do the same with the lining, the base pieces. So I'm going to unclip that, clipped that out of the way before, if you remember. And I'm going to make sure my straps are inside, nicely tucked out of the way. Unclip that. And I'm going to actually push the zipper inside the bag. Okay, so you're sort of folding it inside itself. Okay, then we're going to do the same that we did before. We're going to match up our lining, base together, right sides together, and sew that bottom seam line. And then I'm going to match up that seam line with the middle notch. And I'm going to put a clip in. This is the back panel piece, the bit with our cup holder and our phone pocket. Okay, so I'm just going to match up that notch. Then I'm going to grab my pins. And we're going to pin around that top edge, but we're not going to pin all the way around. We're going to leave as much as we can before that curve. So I'm going to stop about here, put a pin in there so I remember to stop. And I'm going to do about the same the other side, because that is going to be our turning hole. Go back to this side, match it up and sew it round. Then we're going to sew that seam, leave the turning break, turning hole, and then sew the other side. Right, now, as you may have guessed, we're going to sew the other side of the lining. So we're going to line that up with that middle notch, pop a pin in, not a clip, because it is cotton and we can use the pins. Right, so we're going to go over to the machine and we're going to do that seam line. Okay, so we've got those 2 seams done. Now we're going to berth our bag. We're going to reach through and pull the whole thing the right way out. Hooray! Double check that nothing's caught where it shouldn't have. Just going to cut that little hair off. So far so good, so far so good. Great, right. Then of course you want to reach through, pull up that lining, and then you want to hand stitch that closed. You can do it on the machine as well. You want to hand stitch that closed. I'm not going to do that on the live. So now we want to finish off our straps. So we want to get the straps that we made earlier, and we want to also get our sliders, 1 and 2. We're going to get our strap keepers that we made before, and we're going to get our strap ends. Okay, these are optional. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get our... Actually, first of all, we're going to put a couple more rivets in before we go ahead and do that. Make a pen mark first, actually. And I'm going to make it as close as I can to that end. So I'm going to make it 1.5 centimetres. Actually, I'm going to make it 2 centimetres because you want to make sure that the press can get all the way around with the kind of rubber stopper that it has. So that was 2 centimetres from the fold. Just lost one of my straps, haven't I? Down the back. And we're going to make a hole. So now we're going to put the other strap, the strap that's not attached to the bag, through the middle of the slider, like so. If you are making your straps completely out of cotton, so you haven't got the half vinyl, half cotton, you may want to attach this middle of the slider. It also depends on your slider. Some of them have got more space in here, and you don't want this to slip when it's on the person that's wearing it. So what you can do is you can overlap your strap and then force it through that middle bit, and then you get that double thickness, and that's going to stop it when the other strap goes over the top. Okay, so that's through that one. I have used vinyl, so I don't need to do that double layer. Then we're going to put the other end through that D-ring at the bottom. Okay, so you're creating a loop. Hopefully that's really clear. Creating a loop. One thing I'm just going to do real quick is I'm going to move that around so that the overlap is underneath. Okay? That makes sense? Then we're going to be putting 2 rivets in there to fasten it closed. Now, one thing you can do as well at this stage is you can put your strap connectors on. Your strap connectors literally go round there. So actually we'll do that after we've done this. We'll do our rivets first. So let's measure that out. And we're going to have a 3 centimetre overlap, and we want to mark for 1 rivet, and we're going to do 1.5, another rivet. So that first rivet is, it's a bit difficult to see with the print, isn't it? 1 centimetre from that end, and then I've done 1.5 centimetres and made another mark. And then I'm going to overlap it, and I'm going to use my hole punch to go through those layers. So that's one part of the strap done. Then we're going to get our connector. We're going to wrap that around, and we're going to see how much overlap there is. So you want to pop your strap through. Would help if we threaded it through, wouldn't it, first? We're going to pop our strap through that slider, like so. To adjust it. Then we're going to wrap our connector, our strap keeper around, and you want to make sure that it's kind of tight enough but not too tight, okay? So I'm going to overlap it the other way because that end wasn't as pretty as it could have been. So I'm going to put a mark for my rivet, but I'm also going to put a notch where that underneath piece of the strap keeper is kind of matching up. So then when I take the strap out, I've got a little bit of wiggle room in there that I can get the hole punch and then the rivet press in there. I don't know if you can see, but I've had to make it go at an angle like that, so the strap's not kind of nicely overlapping. It's gone at an angle so that you can get it in the rivet press, and that's okay because it's only 1 rivet. We can swivel it around afterwards. Okay, so I'm gonna get that nicely closed, and then we can swivel it around. Pop the strap inside the strap keeper, and then we can put on the strap ends. Now I have, of course, can't find what I've done with my tiny little screwdriver. So what you do is you literally slide it on. I do recommend that you put some fray check on the end. You can also pop some super glue in the end as well as you're putting it on, which will help keep it in there. And then with any luck, you can slide it on. Oops, help if I did it the right way, wouldn't it? Doesn't that look cool? And that hasn't even got the screws in there, and it's pretty much staying on there. So I'll pop those screws in and a little bit of super glue on the back a little bit later. And then of course we're going to do the same on the other strap. Oh look, he's got 1 tooth up, 1 tooth down. That's so cute. And then we've got our cup holder and our phone pocket and our pen pockets and a little nod to Frozen with the inner pocket. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you loved this tutorial. You can find all the information in the description below, and I'll see you on the next video.